kind of my fault, I guess. So I was at an auction in Glasgow, and the plan was to get like a fire damage flat in Glasgow, and there was like a slight mix-up with the auction lots, and yeah, so here we are.
And you managed to accidentally buy 1/4 of a very derelict James Wood.
Yeah, and we kind of thought, oh, how bad can it be? And then it was quite bad.
Yeah.
But we decided to get the rest of it anyway, and to keep going with it.
Empty homes can lead to a spiral of decline in a local community. I mean, you see several boarded up empty properties. It can affect the way that people feel about the place that they live in. It can cause less footfall for local shops and businesses, and in general can just make people feel a little bit of less pride. It can reduce the economic confidence in an area, and it can also reduce the prices of neighbouring properties. Whereas bringing these homes back into use can sort of take away that spiral of decline and, really revitalise and regenerate a local community.
Well, at the auction, 3 of the 4 lots sold. Somebody bought one of the others, and then so we immediately got the other 1/4 that was still going. So we had half the building. So we were halfway there.
So the 4th piece was the most difficult. We had no idea who owned the last 1/4 of the building, and it took many months before Kelly managed to contact the owner of the final unit and managed to be a liaison between us and them.
This property has been on the radar of the local authority for a number of years, just due to the dilapidated condition and the complaints by the community council, members of the community. Claire and Cal first reached out to me when they acquired the property back in autumn 2018. It was a welcomed inquiry. I think since I started being involved in the building back in about 2013, I'd been dealt with 8 different owners. At that time, tenement consisted of 4 flats, different owners, and many of those have been sold at auction repeatedly. So it was always very challenging to get any coordinated action or responses from the owners, and we could never take forward the project beforehand. So Claire and Cal certainly breathed new life into the building.
I think we wouldn't have found the last owners, and I don't think they would have been motivated to sell at auction if it wasn't for Kelly getting involved and letting them know that there was somebody that was taking on the rest of the building and wanted to renovate. So that was the missing puzzle piece, that last unit. And 6 months after the accidental purchase of the first apartment in the building, we were the proud owners of an entire derelict building.
Hey, welcome to Dunoon, everybody. I'm Callum, this is Claire.
Hello.
And this is the house we just bought.
So this is our house. Stone building, and only half of it's falling down at the moment.
Not our half, luckily.
So yeah, we have a ton of structural work to do up there. It needs a new roof. Lots of work for us to do. We're hoping to do nearly the whole place ourselves.
There are approximately 43,000 long-term empty homes in Scotland, and this is a varying picture across local authorities. So some authorities have seen rises in empty homes, and some authorities have seen falls in the number of empty homes.
I think empty homes cause so much blight in our communities. They don't meet our local housing needs. They can have damaging impacts on property values, neighbouring and adjoining properties. So I think bringing empty homes back into use can't be underestimated. They have so many positive impacts.
So once we got past the initial problem with the ownership, there was the biggest thing that really stared us in the face was the sort of the front wall, and the bay window was kind of collapsing a bit, or quite a bit, and there was like cracked lintels, lots of sort of rotten Bresma beams. So there's these sort of big structural challenges. And that was stuff, especially when it came to the masonry, of stuff I'd never dealt with before. Once we got into stuff that I was sort of used to doing, like all the framing and flooring and stuff, felt really good that we could do it. But yeah, definitely some of those beginning structural issues were quite intimidating, I think.
I think one of the biggest challenges was finances.
Yeah.
We did not have enough money to do this project at the beginning of it, and it has been trickle funded, and having it as a slow project where we took it on bit by bit and really broke it down into small tasks and just like worked away at it has kind of been the reason we've been able to finance it as well. But even at the beginning, I think when we did the roof, you initially said there's absolutely no way we can do the roof. We're gonna have to get a contractor in for it. And then we realized how much money that would cost, and soon realized that we could do a roof. Our empty homes officer, Kelly, she pointed us in the right direction. She informed us about how to take care of an old historic building. That was really important.
Claire also read the entire building code for Scotland,
I
as though
did,
it was like a
basically.
thrilling novel.
I did. I read every piece of building code that was relevant to this building.
I think in the first instance it was advice and assistance, given information on, first of all, acquiring ownership of the whole tenement, looking at the condition of the building, the structural elements in particular that had to be addressed, costings to make sure they could get the cost of the project to stack up, and then looking at actually how that would come to fruition in terms of sustainability, materials, planning permission, building warrants, so signposting to make sure they got the right advice and made informed choices right at the offset. And I'm really pleased that we have been able to support Claire and Cal for the upper half of the project, because that'll be owner occupied on completion, and we'll be able to give an empty homes grant of £10,000 towards those renovation costs, which has really made a significant difference, and I think, you know, helped the project actually happen.
One major motivator is it's that we're sort of working for ourselves, that we're going to have a home and a business at the end of it.
Also, living in a caravan for 4 years is really motivating to get a house done. And I think it's also, you know, we've had this amazing community supporting us the whole way through.
Yeah,
and
honestly don't think that we probably would have got to this stage without that support.
Yeah,
from
I think
locally.
The fact that this has truly felt like home for us since very early on in the project because of everybody around us, that's been a huge motivating factor.
Well, the community was involved right from the start. I think they took Cal and Claire to their hearts, because right from the beginning they were offered showers in houses and hot meals and invited round for just a bit of warmth and comfort when we saw the accommodation that they had to live in for a number of years. And in the other direction, they've really integrated themselves into the community. They've been so friendly and welcoming. They found time to come along to the community council. Claire's on the development trust. They're prepared to give their time to help local projects, and it's really great to see. So the US Navy was based here for a number of years until 1992 when they left, and they'd had a big impact on accommodation in the area. Lots of properties rented out to them. So when they left, we had an oversupply of houses that went onto the market, a number of which hadn't been looked after very well, and that remained for a number of years, and there were some houses that never did get renovated. So it's good to see one of these coming along now.
It would have probably sat here and fallen into an even worse state of disrepair, and we'd have been getting called out to something that would probably collapse, and we'd maybe even then have to demolish it, because it'd be in, the council can't bring a building back to renovate it. It would be a demolition job if that was the case.
It's really nice to have been able to keep the building. So it's one of 5 in a row that all look the same. And I think it's such a shame as well, a lot with modern buildings. I think they're sort of generally given a lifespan of 60 years, which just seems crazy for a new build that's not, you know, you spend 30 years paying for it on the mortgage and then it's halfway done. Whereas with these buildings, you know, if as long as they're looked after, they'll just last forever. So it's really nice to sort of keep the look of it from the front, so it sort of still fits in with the surroundings, with the neighbouring houses. I think it's really important to try and preserve these buildings if possible.
From a sustainable perspective, if you have homes lying empty in small towns or small villages, often this can lead to the closure of local shops, local schools, you know, services and amenities. Whereas bringing these empty homes back into use can help to sustain a community. But also there can be an advantage of bringing an older property back into use, because it's already connected to existing infrastructure and the carbon emissions that are released are often less than from demolishing and starting again from scratch.
This could have just been knocked down and a new building built on it, but that is very carbon heavy doing that. When you've got an older property like this, it can stand for another 100 years if you maintain it and look after it.
Sustainability has been one of our major goals from the very start of the project. I think
it started with not knocking the place down in the first place, and then about just reusing as many of the materials we can. So much stuff's recycled, come from other projects. And then some of the choices we made in terms of, like using sheep wool insulation, and we sort of tried to apply that ethos across the whole board whenever we can. Like sometimes we've had to compromise because of finances and stuff, but that's always kind of our first thought in terms of, any problem we're trying to solve.
Just by restoring, you're taking out a huge chunk of that carbon that would otherwise be put into building a new structure. So that was the initial thing. I think another thing that people don't really think of as part of sustainable building, but is really important. You need to remember that this is a traditionally built building and it has different requirements from a new building. And by, allowing the building to breathe and move and
not too
taking
much.
care of it, you're letting a building last longer. You're preserving the materials of the building. We reused every tiny little bit of this building that we could. All the old paneling that had survived, there was a lot of water damage, but all the
pretty
doors...
much anything that had 20 coats of paint on it over the last 100 years was salvageable, but anything that didn't was completely rotten, basically.
So we've reused architraves and paneling and doors from the building. We've also gotten in contact with other local buildings owners who were knocking down their buildings, and we've managed to salvage some beautiful historic features from those buildings and reuse them in our place. So that's been really special. We've used old kitchens that people were tearing out that were perfectly good kitchens and upcycled them and used them in our place. All the floors in the building are recycled from an old carpet factory, which is a bit ironic because they're wooden floors. And we've been on eBay the whole entire time, which has saved us a lot of money, but also kept the project really sustainable.
Preserving these old buildings sort of culturally and in terms of sustainability is really crucial, and I think, for the vast majority of people that is a much more achievable goal. A lot of these buildings, they need a lot of work, but if people are prepared to put that in, they'd be really, really rewarded as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that most of the homes that we're planning to live in, across the next 20 years or so have already been built in Scotland. So we need to think about how we can take some of these really older buildings and bring them back into use. And Cal and Clare are a real shining example of what can be achieved with tenacity and hard work. I suppose they've taken a real derelict eyesore and they've transformed it into something that anybody would like to live in. And it hasn't been easy, but they've used sustainable materials, they've used local contractors, and they've really gone that extra mile to retrofit this empty home and turn it into something, a fabulous place to live for themselves and for people that can come in onto the bottom 2 floors.
I think if I was to give anyone advice on taking on a project, it'd be like, make sure you get the right building to begin with. And then just to stick at it, really. Not everything goes right first time. That's something that we've learned. We haven't had the budget to bring in trades, so there's lots of stuff we've had to learn for the first time, and I think anyone can do them, but you have to be prepared for it to go wrong and do it again, and if you keep at it, you'll get there.
I'd say get in touch with Empty Homes officers because they're a wealth of knowledge and they'll point you in the right direction. Also, inform yourself. Go read historic Scotland's pamphlets and go read a book or two on restoring sustainably. There's some really amazing resources out there that'll point you in the right direction, and just take it on bit by bit. We've been saying that to people for years now. People say, oh, how's the project coming on? And we go, we're getting there bit by bit. We've said that thousands of times, but it's true. You just need to take it on
one step at a time.
step at a time, and you'll get there eventually.